we have breaking news coming in from the United States, wherein the United States SC, that is the Supreme Court, clips wings. Trump claws back. Trump increases tariffs yet again, and this time we see Donald Trump coming out to say raising global tariffs from 10% to 15%. New tariffs are to be implemented immediately. 15% tariff fully allowed, legally tested. President Donald Trump has now, in fact, announced that he will be raising a temporary tariff on the U.S. imports from all countries from 10% to 15% a day after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against his signature tariff program based on an economic emergency law. Now, infuriated by the Supreme Court's verdict, Trump on Friday ordered an immediate 10% tariff on all imports, in addition to any existing duties, that is. Now, this continues since, in fact, day before yesterday, when the entirety of the announcement, or rather that Supreme Court ruling came out, which said that Donald Trump imposing tariffs against countries, especially using the Emergency Powers Act, is unconstitutional because it was not approved by the Congress. It did not go through the passage of congressional approval that is required to impose such tariffs. Now, once that particular ruling came in, Trump wasn't one to back down. He first came up with a global tariff of 10%. This is again under another different act of 1974, Section 122. And now that particular tariff has been increased to 15%. We have Pranay Upadhyay joining us on the broadcast with more details on this particular update that's now coming in. Pranay, this is the maximum. Firstly, a very good morning to you. This is the maximum length to which this tariff, under Section 122, the limit to which tariffs could have been imposed was 15%. Now, this, however, still requires a congressional approval as well, and the time period for that is 150 days. So there's a lot riding on the Congress at this given point of time, be it the ruling first that's come in, then Trump's tariffs, global tariffs 10%, now 15%. How are we looking at the way forward for Donald Trump at this point in the Congress itself? What's his way ahead?
Good morning, Shreya. This is quite evident and quite clear that the Trump administration is actually feeling, the heat of the Supreme Court ruling, because, this can cause a lot of disruption as far as the Trump administration's tariff policies are concerned. And therefore, President Donald Trump has decided to revise within 24 hours and take forward his the tariff announcement under Section 122 of the Trade Act 1974 to its maximum extent, which is 15 days. As you also mentioned, this requires ratification after 150 days. So he has bought a temporary relief of around 5 months. But after 5 months, if he want to continue, imposing this 15%, he need to get that congressional ratification. But I think the Trump administration could already see this coming from the Supreme Court, and I think therefore the Senator Lindsey Graham's bill is still a work in progress, and they are working out a congressional route as well. And in fact, there is a bipartisan support on Trump administration's tariff policies under the Lindsey Graham's bill. So there is a work which is being done by the congressional route as well. But meanwhile, to minimize the disruption, I think President Donald Trump has decided to take it to the maximum extent, which is permissible under the Section 122 of the Trade Act 1974. And this is also to minimize disruption, because there were variable tariffs applicable to many countries. Since earlier he announced 10%, while only UK had earlier 10% tariff applicable, India had 18%, Europe had 15%, and other countries also have different tariff percentage. And the problem, which is many importers in the United States are facing, is that what rate they should import their products in United States from various other countries. And also there is still a challenge or a problem for the US government to on the issue of refund. So I think the Trump administration is trying to bridge that gap, and in fact to plug that challenge. because refund on the refund issue, the Supreme Court opinion is largely silent, to which President Donald Trump has also pointed out that they did not specify that, what we have to do on the tariff already collected. If the legal basis of IPA, in the President Donald Trump's emergency economic power, yeah, if on those basis, if he could not implement or if he could not take forward his tariff policies, then what will happen to the tariff already collected? So there are various complicated issues, and I think Trump administration is trying to work out some legal basis. And I think this is the alternative constitutional route President Donald Trump has used, and he still have other routes as well, because within that Supreme Court ruling itself, in under the dissent note, Justice Kavanaugh mentioned about these alternatives available with the President Donald Trump.
Right. Pranay, the last 48 hours, what we have seen is there is an internal matter at this given point of time. I mean, when we say internal matter, the Supreme Court ruling that came out, that is essentially an internal matter for the United States. But a particular decision, or rather a particular ruling that's coming from the United States against the United States president, just these developments in itself has brought the entire global economy to be on edge, simply because everybody is looking at that particular man at this given point of time, that is Donald Trump, as to what will his next move be. And that is exactly the kind of vulnerability that we are seeing. And Saturday, Sunday, we see markets are shut across the world. It will be, the full effect of this entirely will be felt on Monday.
Absolutely right, Shreya. The global markets would be very keenly watching what happens in the United States, and in fact, they'll be worried about the fallout of the recent developments in the United States, because the tariffs are volatile right now. President Donald Trump initially announced 10% global tariffs. Then he indicated that there could be a revision, which revision came within 24 hours, and he revised it to the maximum extent of 15%. And besides that, he already indicated that now Supreme Court has empowered President to collect more tariffs, which he did not intend to earlier. But now he will use the alternative constitutional routes, and President can do whatever he want to safeguard the economic interest of the United States, and he will make sure that he exercises those rights on those powers which are vested in the office of the U.S. president. So clearly, the Trump administration is on one side taking on and putting up a brave face, putting up giving out the message that he is not disturbed or derailed by the Supreme Court ruling. Rather, he would want to continue with the tariff policies. But on the other side, if you see, there is an uncertainty, there is a volatility for the economic partners of those who are trading with the United States, because there is a challenge. At what rate the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, U.S. Customs would be charging the U.S. imports? What will happen to the money which was extra charged by the U.S. Customs, and what will be the mechanism of the refund? Because if you recall, Shreya, there was a clause, there was a mention about the refund in terms of the tariffs collected in trade with India, also in the recent statement put out by the White House after having a trade deal with India. So clearly, U.S. government is obliged to make those refunds if someone claim those refunds of the tariffs already collected. So clearly, there is an issue, there is a challenge, and I think Trump administration is trying to minimize those issues. Though this, as you rightly said, that this is largely to do with the domestic politics of the United States, but definitely it has international ramification and international consequences of these domestic political developments of the United States.
Absolutely. Pranay, thank you for bringing us all those details. We will keep our focus largely on international affairs in this very hour, so we'll come back to you.